Today I want to talk about the fact that I got laid off from my last tech job. And since then I have not been able to find a new job. But let me give you more details, let me paint a better picture of the past couple of years and where I am right now. In 2021, in fairness, I did leave my job. And I left my job because I downsized to a smaller apartment, a cockroach-infested apartment, right on the railroad tracks, living in a small studio, even though I was making six figures. But that is what I had to do to finally get out of debt. Then from there, the momentum kept going and I started saving up, while still living well below my means, not buying a new car, not spending $800 to $1,000 on a car payment, not spending more than I had to on rents. So I was out of debt and finally had enough money to travel for a couple of years. And I took that first year off in 2021, and then I started looking for a job in early 2022. I think it had to be in January, because by February I had a new contract job, a contract that was supposed to last a full year from February until February, leading a remote team of people all over the country, which was different for me because usually I lead teams that are in India, even though I have to drive into an office to lead my team in India. So that is what I did in 2021. The goal, the purpose, the plan was to have that remote job from February 2022 until February 2023. But as Mike Tyson says, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. And let me just tell you about this experience at the last job that I held. It was working for a larger corporation, but I was not literally working directly for them. I was hired through a staffing agency, and the staffing agency's goal was to build a team that could help this bigger organization. And I was the project manager or the scrum master, whatever you want to call it, of that team to make sure that we got everything done in time. And that team that I led had, I think, 5 software developers and then 1 quality assurance tester. Pretty standard. If you've been in IT, you know this. If not, it's not important. So from there, we had these different assignments, but everything was a challenge. Now, partially it was because everyone was, as they say in India, a fresher. This was all of the developers and the testers' first job. And it was a group of Americans, and they weren't exactly hungry to take their skills to the next level, to get better each and every day, which is really a mindset that I couldn't relate to. That was very difficult. And also, I couldn't understand it because various teams I led for 11 years in India, I mean, they were always hungry. They wanted more. They wanted to do their very best. And we're not even talking about H-1Bs mostly. We're talking about people who are in India. So they didn't have this motivation of, if I don't do a good job, I am going to get deported. It was, if I don't do a good job, I could lose this. I mean, it's not like they had to leave India. They could probably get a new job. The stakes weren't as high. But they still worked very hard and tried their level best. But that is not the experience I had with this team. To add on to that, to put fuel on the fire, since we were not a part of the bigger organization, things were very difficult because we didn't have access. We didn't have access to look up people in Teams. We couldn't look up people in Microsoft Outlook. We couldn't look up someone in the directory to see if they were available to send them a message on Teams. We couldn't look someone up in the directory to see what their proper email address was to send them an email. If someone from that actual organization didn't send us an email, we'd have no idea how to email them. So it was constantly going to our boss, who was actually a member of that large organization, to try and get information like email addresses. Are they available? Are they even in the office? All that kind of stuff. And then there was the fact that we didn't have access to the resources that we needed to do our job in the first place. So most of the documentation was uploaded to SharePoint, and once again, we had no access to that. So we couldn't collaborate and do all this team building stuff that all the HR people want you to do. We couldn't get the documentation that we needed to do any real development, and I had to keep asking my boss, well, like I said, worked at the organization who had full access. Hey, can you get us access to this? Oh, we're trying, we can't do it. Okay, can you just like download the stuff and send it to us? Oh, well, we can't really do that. Okay, then how are we supposed to do our job? So it was just a really frustrating time anyways. And it wasn't an ideal situation anyways, but it was a job. I was grateful to have it and try to make it work. I mean, I had to interview people and basically get my own documentation, redo all of the work that was already done because we didn't have access to the files. I had to be the one to just send messages to people because my team would always be like, well, we should have access to this. We should be able to know if we can message someone. And it's like, bro, take a chance, take a risk, right? So they didn't want to do any of that. So it was not the ideal situation, but it was a job, it was good money, and even though it was frustrating, I mean, it was worth it for the paycheck, right? Then comes December, and I get it, companies are looking at their budgets to see what they're gonna do for the next year. But to me, if I've allocated money for something for a fixed amount of time, I'm gonna run that thing through. And yeah, the team wasn't great and we weren't accomplishing what we needed to do, and I get it. Basically, the entire country is an at-work or at-will state. Like, it's an at-will country. They can fire you anytime, you can leave anytime, but if you leave and don't give 2 weeks notice, you're blackballed and you're treated like you're a terrible person, but the employers at least can fire you at any time. So I don't necessarily blame them. I just think it kind of sucks that they couldn't see that 1-year contract through. I mean, it was only another couple months. Could have given us a couple more months of income and they could just say, hey, we're not renewing it. Instead, in December, they acted like the contract was supposed to end at the end of the year as opposed to ending in February. And they just told us, oh, well, hey, you know, we're gonna have to let your team go because we're just gonna end the contract. They didn't have the balls to say, oh, we're letting you guys go because you're not meeting your deliverables. You guys aren't getting enough done. I mean, just be honest. Because the truth was we weren't doing a great job as a team. Whether I thought I was doing a good job or not, it's one of those, you can lead a horse to a water, but you can't make them drink. You could lead a team and try to push them. I mean, they wouldn't even put their updated work into Jira. Like, just if you have something in the backlog and you start working on it, just move it on to in progress. Like, it's not super complicated. I even had to do that for a while. And I was like, you guys got to do this. You guys got to do this, because I would get called out and they would be like, it doesn't seem like your team's working on anything because Jira's not updated. I mean, I get it. I do understand why they didn't renew our contract. I'm just still really bitter, obviously, that they couldn't even go a couple more months. And also, it was a staffing company, so I was like, okay, well, what's the deal, guys? Like, you built this team once. Like, can maybe you replace the developers and, you know, give me another shot at it? No, they didn't want to do that either. So yeah, they acted in December like it was supposed to always end. We're just gonna not renew the contract for the next year, and that was it. So like I said, I had enough money saved up to last a couple of years, not even really expecting or relying on having another even 9 months of income. So I was still in a pretty good spot at that point. So I traveled around for another year, and that year was 2023. It was an awesome year. Went to some incredible countries and tried to renew the cycle of take a year off, work a year, take a year off, work a year. But that was January 2024. And that's when the plan completely fell apart, because we entered the, obviously, 2024 job market. And this is where we stand right now, where I didn't go through the 1999-2000 dot-com crash, so I can't relate to that. But I have been in the job market through the 2008 great financial crisis, and that was not ideal. At that point, just had my bachelor's degrees in finance and real estate, and I couldn't find a job in my hometown, so I had to move across the state to take a job in a different industry in order to get a job at all, but I was able to get a job. And I had a job all throughout the pandemic, and even in 2022, like I said, which depends how long you think the pandemic actually lasted or whatever, but was able to get a job pretty easily. I mean, within a couple of weeks, making more money than I ever made before and working remotely in January 2022. And yes, it didn't last a year, but I mean, it was a good 9 months, right? It's really surprising right now that this job market is that bad, because it's not like we're in the heart of a pandemic, because I was able to get a job through that. It's not like we're in a huge real estate crash, like we're in a stock market crash. Conceptually, there should be no reason why it is difficult to get a job in technology right now. I can't think of a reason. The only thing I can really pinpoint is Elon showed that you can fire the majority of your workers, go down to a skeleton crew, and regardless whether the company's doing better or not, regardless of whether you've destroyed your company's PR by renaming it something stupid, and people even still call it by its old name even though you rebranded it, who cares about any of that stuff? The fact that the company didn't shut its doors, even though they could constantly be filled with cash if they needed to by a billionaire, but who cares about any of that stuff? The company didn't go under. So the very bare minimum is the model, is the game plan, is a plan of action that all these other companies are taking. But that's the only thing I can think of as far as why all these companies are laying people off and not hiring them. And I guess you could say, oh, it's an election year too, but I don't know. If you're in the job market, do you feel comfortable and confident that regardless of who wins, that you're going to be able to get a job finally in January, February? Because I don't know. I don't really feel confident. So I spent about 6 months basically nonstop acting like applying for a job was my full-time job, and applied over 2,100 applications, 2,100 jobs before I even stopped counting, and made $0. So where does that leave us? If it's this hard to get a job, I mean, you gotta do something. And that's where this YouTube channel comes in. So back in the summer, this channel was at 700 subscribers, really, really low on watch hours. I had like one video about how to set up a PayPal account that had any kind of traction in the history of this channel, which I started back in 2019. So I started taking this more seriously, and I went through a couple of topics. I'll dive into this more in tomorrow's episode, but I finally started taking this channel seriously because this was the only option I had. I mean, I can still apply to jobs and make $0, or I can put more time, more effort into this YouTube channel. I can show up and put out 5 videos a week on this YouTube channel, and it's not enough to pay my bills, not yet, but I'm making more money than I'd make just applying to jobs all day. So tomorrow I'll talk about what are your options, what do you even do if you're faced with being laid off and you can't get a new job. But that's my story about how I got laid off from my last tech job and why we're here right now on this Labor Gains channel. So if you've been laid off recently, love to hear your story. Love to hear what you're going through in this current job market. So leave me a comment down below and we can share our pain of being laid off and having to try to find a new job in this 2024 job market. Talk to you later.